Hi, everyone. This is David Cohen, and I'm here with my amazing co-host,
Brad Feld.
Hey, Brad. And this is the Give First podcast. And in the startup world, Give First means simply trying to help anyone, especially entrepreneurs, without any expectation of getting anything back. So we'll be talking to mentors and founders about what Give First looks like in action and how it makes great entrepreneurship possible.
We polled everyone, and they said consistently that their favorite part of the show was the legal mumbo jumbo. So here it is. The following discussion is an expression of personal opinion and does not represent the opinion of Techstars or any company we discuss. Our conversations for informational purposes only, including any mention of securities or funds. This is not legal, business, investment, or tax advice and is not intended for use by any investor. Certain of Techstars funds own or may own in the future securities in some of the companies discussed in this podcast. Got it?
Two cannibals and a clown, huh?
Does this taste funny to you?
Does this taste funny to you? That's cute. I like that. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see you, man.
You too. I love your glasses.
Well,
Mine are green. They're not quite as pronounced.
but you make up for it in other ways.
Thank you. I just want to have a conversation with you today, so let's just do that.
We're in the right place at the right time. I got a hard stop in 52 minutes.
Well, we can stop sooner than that because I just want 30 minutes of Brad and Seth content.
Looking forward to it.
Let's start with two things. One, since this is, for an official podcast and stuff, tell the world what you remember about the first time we met. I'm going to tell the world what I remember, but you tell me what you remember.
Before I talk about this vivid memory, which I would testify on a Bible in court about, there are very few memories from that year, but this one's very vivid. I just want to say for the record out loud, your book is terrific.
Thank you.
It is not your life's work, but it deserves to be in that section of the library. It will change lives. It's a testament to how many lives you've already changed, including mine. You changed mine in a very big way.
Well,
So
I didn't ask you for a blurb, but that is way better than a blurb because
it's all true.
Blurbs are useless.
They are useless.
Would die, but thank you.
Okay, so Jerry Colonna had met me when he was part of a VC firm. Then he left and joined Fred Wilson. And Fred and Jerry came up to Irvington, New York to have lunch at a little cafe near my office. And the restaurant served Fred undercooked chicken. I almost killed him. But
very important person.
The lunch seemed to go well. They had not made any investments at any time. They were new at this.
Yep.
And they said, we'd like to meet your tech team in Boston, and we're going to bring Brad to do some due diligence. I have no idea who Brad is. And we're sitting in the basement of this place in Boston where I've got 6 tech people, and I'm pretty nervous. I'm out of my depth. I've never done anything like this before. And in walks this guy. He isn't the Big Lebowski. He's much more fit than that. He's more mellow than that, but he's a sight to behold. He is the coolest person I've ever seen in my entire life. He's wicked smart. He goes up to the whiteboard. Dan and Brad are back and forthing with the paper clips and sticks that we're holding together our software. And I have no clue if he is completely annoyed by the whole thing or amazed. I don't know. And then the next day, Jerry says, okay, we're in. So that's my memory of meeting Brad.
That's a good memory. It's pretty close to mine. So that was the very first meeting I did for SoftBank. And so I was now living in Boulder. We'd moved to Boulder. Maybe that was like 1990.
4, 3, 5.
God, I can't remember even the time. It was 95. It was maybe end of 95, early 96.
It was 30 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, 30. Isn't that amazing? And I had I'd already met Jerry. And the way I knew Jerry was I was the chair at the time of a company in Boston called NetGenesis that Raj Bhargava had started. It was my very first angel investment. I had no idea what I was doing. Of course, we made the company created 3 products instead of 1 product. Mistake number 1 for a tiny little startup at the very beginning of the internet. One of those 2 products was something called NetThread, which was basically the first threaded discussion group manager, something or other thing. And so on a web page, you could actually have a discussion back and forth.
A breakthrough.
And Jerry had invested in this tiny little company at the prior fund he was at CMGI called eShare.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was called eShare then. And they had like a chat thing. And somehow we ended up like meeting through that. And that company eShare bought the NetThread thing. And I ended up joining the board of eShare as well. And all of these things were happening at the same time that I was still CTO of the company that bought mine, Ameridata, but I was now consulting for them more than I was working full time. And I had known this guy, Charlie Lax.
Oh, Charlie Lax.
Right? Remember Charlie? I had known Charlie and from just the Boston community and investing and stuff like this. And he'd looked at investing at NetGenesis and didn't, and looked at something else and didn't. And I don't remember. And he called me up one day and said, hey, I'm working with this company called SoftBank. I don't know who the hell SoftBank is. And I'm looking at doing an investment in this company called Yoyodyne. And I knew what Yoyodyne was from my science fiction past.
Exactly.
And when are you in Boston? I just happened to be in Boston. And so he said, I'm doing it with, I'm doing a thing with Fred Wilson and Jerry Colonna. Do you know them? And I'm like, yeah, I know Jerry a little bit. Will you go to this place? I think it was in Framingham or something, or Newton.
It was in Medford.
Medford. Can you go to this place in Medford? I'm like, fuck, I don't have a car in Boston. Okay, I'll figure out how to get to Medford. That's like 1,000,000 miles away. And they didn't have Uber then, of course. So like how do you get to Medford from Boston is like trains. And that's the first time I ever met Fred. And so I walk into this place, same thing. I walk into this place and I kind of felt immediate kinship with Fred, but in a different way because we're, like our brains work differently, but we both had an MIT background. And, he didn't really feel like the venture capitalist that I'd met in Boston, he didn't really feel like that.
Right.
And then I kind of had a similar but different reaction to you, where you were doing something in a domain I really didn't know much about, which was publishing. And it wasn't really publishing, but it was kind of the intersection of publishing and the web. And you had like a bunch of books somewhere on the wall or something, and it was games. And but that was very comfortable to Jerry because of his background. And I remember walking out of that meeting. I walked into the meeting. I had a lot of fun. Like it was a first time I'd done that. I'd done a bunch of technical diligence now for Ameridata, but I'd never done any for Fred and Jerry or for SoftBank. I didn't really know what the fuck they wanted from me. I just showed up and did shit. And but I left thinking, I like this guy Seth a lot. And that begat a 30-year friendship, which is kind of fascinating. Like I think about all the people over the last 30 years that I've gotten to know through something like that. And fortunately, and I want to, play back the other direction. You think about the people you've gotten to know over the last 30 years through something like that interaction where you really didn't have an expectation. You didn't really know where it was going to go. Right. For me, it's been profound to have the journeys interwoven where I'm thinking about the word. Friendship's not the right word. Kinship?
Yeah, we don't live in the right zip code to have the kind of friendship people traditionally
We're not together all the time. We don't have dinner. We don't hang out.
Which I miss a great deal. But the thing is,
there's
some people end up in an instant yes category. So when Techstars reached out, even though it wasn't you reaching out, and they said, "Will you mentor?" It's like, well, Brad's involved, sure. And the whole mindset, many of the people that I met during those heydays, and it was so fast, everything that happened, they were self-centered, short-term thinking. They wanted to have drinks and cigars, and they were playing a transactional game. And if I had to transact, I was going to transact, but there was no connection beyond that. And then there were other people. After I sold the company to Yahoo, I went back to Jerry and Fred as a volunteer, and I worked there for a year, and I refused to let them give me a job because I didn't want that. I wanted to be in the room with them. And every single time you and I have had a chance to dance together, I've come out ahead. And are there 100 people on that list? Probably, but there aren't 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I think when I think about the journey that, we've had over that period of time, which has been from a distance, there's a couple of moments in time where we're in person. And those moments in time, maybe they're separated by a decade. I remember, you'll remember the restaurant. It was in New York City. It was at a Korean lunch place. What was the name of the place? Do you remember the place?
I'm guessing we went for sundubu jjigae, tofu stew, but it could have been Hangawi.
Okay, so words I can't even spell.
Yeah.
And I was just in New York City, and I sent you a note saying, "Hey, I'm in New York City. You want to get together?" And the next thing was, "Yes, here tomorrow, this time." I had something. I canceled it. Those moments where it's like, yeah, sure, I've seen you, I've talked to you on the phone, I've sent you emails, whatever, our paths cross, but like you're in a room with somebody and it's like time didn't pass from the last time you were with them. And yeah, maybe I do have 50 or 100 people like that too in my world. And you gave me language that I didn't have before this call. I would use default yes and default no as challenges. And I'd be, kind of naturally in default yes. I say no a lot all day long. You say no a lot all day long. I say to Amy sometimes, you know what, the reason that she says, why did you agree to do that with that person? I said, they were the 51st person I talked to. I just needed to reset my no counter to 0. I was so tired of saying no. I just needed to say yes to something. She's like, well, that's random. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fun, isn't it? But then there's this idea of immediate yes,
right?
Which or automatic. It's like, no, if Jerry Colonna asks me for anything,
right, even a kidney,
doesn't matter. Yeah. Always yes. I need you here tomorrow for this reason, because yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's magical, I feel that in our relationship, but it is linked to this notion of give first that I didn't weave into the book very well, is the people who are immediate yes. I have never felt anyone in that category abuse that.
That's part of the deal. That's
right.
Where I'm going with this is the people who hustle me, some of whom aren't, I'm not going to say bad people, but some of them, even though they mean well, don't understand that if your motto is, well, it can't hurt to ask, you've just walked away from the instant yes category. You can't have it both ways.
Yep.
So the reason that both of us are eager to give Jerry an instant yes is because Jerry censors himself all the time, doesn't ask for things just because he wants them. He waits until it's of mutual benefit. And that kind of community and culture is so important, and the internet has eaten away at it. And I fight against it every day. I want to be in a circle of people who think twice before they ask for something, and if they ask for something, I can eagerly say yes because I know they thought twice.
How do you deal with the inverse of that, especially given the visibility that you have? I mean, the number of people in my world, when I run into something or you and I do something together or send me a note saying, how do you know Seth and can I get you to Seth? And, the answer, of course, is I'm not the person to get you to Seth. it's not a gatekeeper dynamic. It's just like, look, if you're asking me to get you to Seth, that's not an authentic reason to get to Seth kind of dynamic. Just the person, what I often say is, go read some more of Seth's stuff and then figure out how to get to Seth. How do you deal with it on the front line of that, where everybody wants a piece of you continually? You are incredibly accessible. I like to think I'm incredibly accessible. How do you do that without it getting you down, without it making you tired, without it sort of starting to wear you out? The negative parts that I talk about around Give First, how do you modulate for that?
Well, so the word no seems negative, but no can also be a gift. And what I try to do is treat everybody I encounter with respect and offer them dignity. And if somebody says, will you do something? I have zero problem saying to them, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't feel bad about that at all, unless it's somebody who had an expectation that I would say yes. Then I start to feel bad about that. But most of the time, a rational person isn't going to have that expectation. Because no, I'm not going to get on a plane and fly to Dubai and have lunch with your brother-in-law. No, sorry, I can't do that. And so what I do is I'm very clear with people about the things I haven't flown for work in 5 years. If you want me to blurb your book, I'm going to explain to you in a long blog post that I wrote why it's not going to help and what the gig is if you persist. And I blurb a lot of books because I appreciate what people did for me a long time ago. But what I don't do is say yes in the short run to make me feel better and then have to struggle with the consequences of that yes for time afterwards. I would rather give someone a quick no than suffer from a thoughtless yes. And that lets me do my work, which is the reason you wanted to reach me in the first place. And if I become a wandering generality, then I have not been able to do my work.
You've written recently a couple of things on leadership that I would say were pretty profound.
Well, thanks.
Especially in this moment, because the way you talk about leadership is very different than I think the way a lot of people, certainly in the tech industry, are modeling leadership right now.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm finding a lot of things very difficult to relate to. A lot of people I had respect for, I question what is going on, what their motives are, or I'm not sure I question their motives. I make assumptions about their motives that are not very generous.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with what a bunch of people are doing, and then how to essentially not change my behavior, because I'm not gonna, but explain clearly in a way that's useful to people what that is, without just kind of continuing to go down that path.
Yeah.
When you think about the last couple of long form things you've done, separate from the everyday message you put out into the world, which is, wonderful discipline. How do you think about taking that against the backdrop of this current moment? And I'll weave in a very specific example in a sec, but I want the generality of it to get your reaction.
Well, let me try the generality, because you're talking about a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
So I'll break it into two pieces. For people who are on their way to success, there's a trap. This trap has been around since you and I started, which is founder mode. Founder mode is seductive. It's really good for your ego. It will burn you out, and it's not how you build an institution that matters. Leadership is not the act of you doing all the jobs and belittling everybody else. And finding the patience, so I was in founder mode when we met at Yoyodyne.
Yep.
We grew to the point where I had 85 employees and 52 of them reported directly to me. And because I was an amateur, I had no idea what I was doing. And so what leadership is voluntary. It's not management. It's not power. It's turning on a light and saying, we're going over there. Do you want to come? And the Song of Significance is about leadership. The Song of Significance is about how do we show up with and for other people, with and for our customers, with and for our industry in a way that we're happy to put our name on. Because if you're not, there's no prize at the end that's worth you giving up what you stand for. The second half of it, though, is what about after you have traditional measures of success? You and I, between us, probably know 40 billionaires, and most of them are deeply unhappy. And the reason, I think, is not that unhappy people become billionaires. It's that if you've played a game for a very long time where the only way to win is to go to 11, and then you're at the other end, you're out of 11s. And so you find these other arenas to play in, whether it's drinking a bottle of olive oil every day or trying to change the world economy. And because it feels like the only thing you know how to do. These people don't have something that Brad Feld has, and it's enough. And to be okay with enough and to live with the privilege that you have to write a future, not just for you, but for a lot of people, it's really hard to look in the mirror and realize you could do that. So I weave all of these things together when I think about what do we mean by leadership. And, the shortest version is your mom going to be proud of what you're doing? Are you building something that the future you will thank you for? These are really easy compasses to go find. And so we need to walk away from the false proxies of easy metrics where we're just competing with that guy down on Sand Hill Road or wherever. That doesn't get you anywhere.
The sort of logical extension of that, Jerry and I had a dynamic. He wrote about it in his first book, Reboot, where we're having a conversation, and it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And I was a little exasperated with something in my life at the time, and I just sort of blurted out, I think I'm done striving. Right? I just fucking had it with striving. I don't need another whatever. That doesn't mean you're not going to do stuff. It doesn't mean you're going to accomplish stuff, but it's like this big mental reset of and I sat on that. We talked about it for a while. I sat on that, and I really incorporated that in my early 50s into my way of being. I'm watching and observing a lot of people right now. I just had a conversation with somebody prior to this who I have a ton of respect for, has been a successful investor, has been a successful founder, is a good friend. And the conversation was, a little bit about what he was working on, but mostly about what's going on in the world. And, how unsettled he is, how unsettled I am on certain things. And we sort of talk about it. And it led to then this thing, which is he asked a question, why aren't more people talking out? And I pointed him to an article that Tom Friedman wrote yesterday in New York Times titled, "This Israeli Government is a Danger to Jews Everywhere." And, it's an example, Tom being a Jew, Tom being, very high profile publicly, him being a fantastic writer, a really good thinker. You can agree or disagree with him, but he had the bravery or the fearlessness to write his view about something that right now so many people are afraid to talk about. That we know what the side effect or the cycle effect of that is in terms of what's going on in the US right now, and that's causing people to be afraid. How does a leader get through that fear? How does somebody that wants to be true to themselves, but is now fundamentally afraid of how it's going to impact them, whether it's their business or their stature or something exogenous that they're just unknown, they make up in their mind? I feel you're a person who has worked through those things often, has spoken their mind even when it's not comfortable, is not afraid to challenge whatever the norms are in a way that's constructive versus destructive. How do you stay on that over a long arc versus just saying, fuck it, I'm tired of dealing with this?
Well, you're giving me way too much credit, but
I don't think so.
We're surrounded by systems. the wedding industrial complex is a system. The reason a wedding costs $100,000 in New York is because your best friend's wedding costs $96,000. The front lawn in front of most people's houses is a system artifact of status and everything else. So if one person in a gated community lets their lawn grow, it's a giant travesty because they have rules against this because people like us do things like this. And the system that has been amplified by the media of turning politics into a sporting event has created this idea that everyone has to take sides. You're either with me or you're against me, that no one could have anything good about them if they disagree with me about anything, because that attitude sells newspapers, or the equivalent, gets clicks. And, I think one of the biggest mistakes that Sheryl Sandberg made was not building into Facebook's algorithm something that would reward advertisers and users for seeing each other as opposed to dividing each other. And the system would be different if someone architected the system differently. So with all of that said, for the last bunch of years, people come to folks like me who have a platform and say, why aren't you speaking out on this litmus test issue and that issue? It's urgent. And the challenge we have, if we buy into that system, is we're going to increase a cacophony, but we're not going to lead to actual long-term change. The system outlasts us. And I learned this in high school when I was the only student on the, super witness, whatever they call that, advisor on the school board. It became very clear to me that the school board's mindset was just listen to what these kids are saying and ignore them because they'll be gone. And they were right?
Yeah.
and so instead, what I think we can do is do what we can do and do things that frighten us, but we have agency over, that we can figure out how to treat the people in our circle. We can establish standards for what people like us do without it turning into a sign waving, rock throwing sort of thing. So what I've tried to do on my blog is write posts that 5 years later still make sense. And you can read them 5 years later without knowing what the urgency of that moment was. So I'm not in Tom Friedman's line of work, and Tom Friedman has won way more Pulitzer Prizes than me as a result. But if you're leading a group of 50 people, you have to make hard decisions about what proxies are you measuring. You have to make hard decisions about how do you hire? How do you reward? What are your biases when you do X, Y, or Z? You have to make hard decisions about whether you're going to do something that will make you money in the short run or proud in the long run. And it's so easy to avoid those decisions by just saying, I agree, or putting up a flag somewhere and dividing. But it's those hard decisions. That's part of, to get back to your book, the magic of what you're talking about, the community that you built. How many people have been through Techstars so far?
Probably founders. We've had 4,000 companies, so let's say 10,000 people.
So 10,000 people had their lives transformed by an ethos that just a couple people stuck with, even and especially when it was hard to stick with it. And that's the key to the whole thing, is what are you going to do when it's not obvious? The thing about Ayn Rand's juvenile rantings is there's no guts in it. It's just, this is what's good in the short run. Go ahead, do it. Well, that's not leadership. That's laziness. And so I think what we've got to do is establish these patterns and stick with them. And so, in my case with the climate, if I was going to talk about climate change, it wasn't going to do for it to be performative. It had to be something where I was going to have to extend myself and bring leverage and light so that people would change over time. And it turned out the 1,900 people I worked with for a year and a half, I didn't get paid a penny. It was my full-time job. That's expensive, but worth it because it changed my life. It changed their lives. And now 1 million people have touched it. When we put building blocks into the world like that, that is worthwhile. Whereas when we say, I'm going to pretend the algorithm does X, but it really does Y because I'll make some more money for my investors, I don't get why you signed up to do all this work if all you're going to do is be a cog in that system.
Seth, I adore you.
You're way too kind. That was a rant.
That was awesome. We're going to end on that. Thank you. It's great to see you. I don't know if people are listening or watching this one on this podcast, but
Well, if they're watching, they can see our smiles. And you and I have a surprise in store, but I'm not going to spoil it.
We do. We'll talk about it as it gets closer. But
thank you for making this happen.
You. Thanks for the time, and a gigantic virtual hug from Boulder, Colorado.
Back at you from New York.
See ya.
Thanks a lot for listening to the show today. We'd love to hear your feedback, ideas, or who you'd like to hear next on Give First. And please leave a rating and review, ideally a good one. And reach out anytime to podcasts@techstars.com, or on Twitter, I'm @David Cohen. See you next time. Don't forget, give first.